Welcome into another week of Palmetto Sports Daily. Julia, Summer, and Caroline here with you on a Monday. Lots to recap from this past weekend where it seemed like most teams around the state fared pretty well in the last week of the regular season for some and then second to last week for others. And that includes South Carolina rolling through Coastal Carolina 51-7 back here in Columbia on the heels of just a devastating loss at Texas A&M. So they come back, regroup, and beat the Chanticleers 51-7. Just a really powerful performance from the Gamecocks. They come out on the first play. You get the Sellers to Sellers connection between Lenoris and Jaden for that 75-yard score that kind of just set the tone for the entire game. And you know, you could just really see how much they wanted to win this game. Of course, you know, you go through all the emotions of a loss like Texas A&M, and you don't have any more SEC games on the schedule. So you come back here, you get the job done, and now you turn your attention to Clemson. But looking at the numbers here, a huge game for Lenoris Sellers, 16 of 20 passing for 274 yards and 2 touchdowns. He added another 82 rushing yards and another 2 touchdowns on the ground. And the offense as a whole had 579 total yards, 419 of which came in the first half. The defense pitching a shutout, of course, Coastal's only score coming on a blocked punt. So really great performance from South Carolina. Of course, what you want to see going into rivalry week. And Shane Beamer talked about, you know, it wasn't simple to come back here and just beat Coastal Carolina the way they did.
This was not easy. And I know everybody just thinks you're playing a non-SEC team. You're just supposed to roll in there and win 51-7. It doesn't work that way, guys. This is college football, and especially the emotions of last week, the disappointment of last week, responding, and you know, and people wondering how South Carolina's going to respond and how are they going to be motivated and how do they come back from last week. Well, we made a pretty strong statement tonight about what this place is about and the culture in this program, as I knew that we would.
Linebacker Brian Thomas Jr. also talked about post-game. You know, it was really important for them to kind of rewrite the narrative for this team right now. Of course, sitting at 4-7, heading into rivalry week against Clemson. And I'll pose this question to both of you now. Obviously, we'll get into talking about Clemson as a whole, but how much did we need to see a really great performance from South Carolina going into this final week when they're really just going to be playing for state pride? Summer, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just said it. Heading into the Clemson game, South Carolina fans all wanted to see this team kind of make a statement against Coastal. And like Beamer said, yeah, it's hard to do regardless to bounce back. But the Gamecocks, I think, for the most part, did what they needed to do. And I think that win over Coastal is big for their confidence heading into this Clemson game. Now, we know last time Clemson came into South Carolina, it didn't fare in their favor. So you do almost think, because the last 2 times South Carolina's gone to Clemson, they've won there. So you're kind of thinking, is it better or worse at their home? I'm not sure it matters this year because there's a lot of different factors this year compared to last year's Palmetto Bowl. But yes, I think the game against Coastal was huge for this Gamecocks team's confidence heading into the Clemson game. And I mean, Lenoris Sellers said it after the Texas A&M game. He said their big goal now, he said obviously they're not bowl eligible, but they still want to win the state. They took down Coastal, now it's Clemson. So I think that's their big motivation. Obviously Clemson's going to be fired up too, but yeah, I think this game big for that team's confidence, and it's going to be exciting to see how it plays out at noon this Saturday. Caroline, what you thinking?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It's going to be fun to see both of these teams get back on the field, go for the state championship, as they call it in the Palmetto Bowl. But for South Carolina, I mean, I think a win of any caliber was huge. Didn't matter who they were playing this past Saturday. They needed a W in that column, right? I think their last win against Kentucky, we can think all the way back when we were talking about that game, that was at the end of September. So the Gamecocks went the entire month of October and then almost here all of November without a win. Of course, that schedule in between now and then in the SEC was absolutely ridiculous in terms of what their opponents were ranked and the talent there as well. But just getting some momentum, I think, was huge heading into this Palmetto Bowl, because if you're not playing for bowl eligibility, you said it, Summer, you got to be playing for something, and it's playing to get a win in that Palmetto Bowl, get that win back, and, you know, kind of right the ship a little bit, at least to end the season on somewhat of a positive note. Julia?
Absolutely, and a couple notes here before we move to the other team, a part of this rivalry week. Nick Harbor and Dylan Stewart, they of course both did not play in this game, but Shane Beamer said post-game that he expects both of them to be ready to go for this week. And a lighter note as well, defensive line coach Travian Robertson was back this past weekend. He was in the box getting to watch the team and go through the motions for this game. Of course, he got in a car accident back in August, so really great to see the recovery that he's had and being able to be back with the team this week. But let's switch gears to Clemson, Caroline. What are we looking at in the upstate for this coming week?
Yeah, guys. Well, we talked about momentum with the Gamecocks, right? That's exactly what the Tigers had on their side after a win on Saturday over Furman. They take that one 45-10 in their home finale. So that was senior day for the Tigers. It was also Military Appreciation Day out there. Head coach Dabo Swinney saying that this team is playing its best football right now. Obviously, for those of us watching, that has not been the case over the entire course of the season. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of disappointment, but the last 2 weeks with a big-time win over ranked Louisville last week and then getting this win over in-state foe Furman this week, the Tigers do certainly seem to be also trending in the right direction, similar to the Gamecocks with the Palmetto Bowl on the schedule coming up there. A lot of emotions that were in play in that game off the field. Quarterback Cade Klubnik, his last game there at Memorial Stadium, he left in the second quarter, got standing ovation. People were clapping for him. Players were congratulating him as he left the field. Allowed us to see a lot of younger guys. Their backup quarterback rushed for 106 yards. That was Chris Denson out there, who was flying around all over the place. But Cade was talking about the emotions of senior day, and then also his counterpart, Antonio Williams, wide receiver, who the two have become really, really close. He's been one of Klubnik's favorite targets, also announced, because he went through all the senior day activities as well. He announced he's going to be declaring for the NFL draft after this season, despite having one more year of eligibility. So whether players are moving on, their last game, whatever it was, being in Memorial Stadium for the last time, just a lot of emotions that were going on for this Clemson group on Saturday.
I feel like I've just gave everything I have in the last 4 years, and there's been so many great moments and tough moments too, but just be able to walk off that field one last time and have the support of everybody around, it meant a lot. So just thank you for everybody showing up, and appreciate everybody for that.
What I'm most proud about them is how they led this year. With high expectations, disappointment, a lot of negativity and noise around our program, they never let that stuff in our building. They never let it on the practice field. They never let it in the meeting rooms, and that's what I'm most proud of. They're a special group.
Head coach Dabo Swinney's big thing this season has been how much the group has stayed together and pushed through regardless of everything that has gone on. The Tigers, though, now bowl eligible with that win over Furman for the 27th straight season. So Clemson sits at 6-5 heading into the Palmetto Bowl. And guys, I'll ask you kind of similar question we just talked about with the Gamecocks, but what do you expect from the Tigers heading into this bowl? Summer?
Yeah, Caroline, one thing I noticed about this Clemson team, obviously we knew facing Furman they were playing for bowl eligibility, but it looked like the team really played free this past weekend, which I think was very enlightening to see from the Tigers, because I know it's been a stressful up and down season for them. And for guys like Cade Klubnik playing in his senior day, he could have taken on a lot of the pressure and made it a super big antsy moment, but he just looked happy out there and free, which I thought was nice to see for him and for the other seniors. And then, like you said, for guys like Chris Denson to get in there and do what they did, to come in there, get their first, real major reps in a big-time game like this. I think 4 different guys actually got snaps at quarterback, which was cool to see for Clemson. So this is that kind of week of the season, right, when we have these, quote-unquote money games for these teams. But these can also be when you kind of have a trap game or kind of teams slip up. So it was nice to see Clemson and South Carolina go out there, build some confidence, and play like they did. I think for Clemson, it helps them a lot with the momentum going into South Carolina. And it's going to be really interesting to see. I think it's going to kind of come down to just who wants it more in this one and who's fired up this week. Obviously, everyone wants it in a rivalry game, but I don't know. Clemson, they seem to be trending a little more positively right now. I don't know if that was just like how it seemed after the game, but that was kind of the vibes I got after. Julia, what did you see from this Clemson team?
Well, I think that's what's been so cool for me is obviously my 4th season now covering both of these teams. So I came in here at the same time as the Cade Klubniks and the Antonio Williamses. So to see them go through their whole college career and be wrapping up their final season with these teams is really interesting to see. And of course, looking at both sides of this matchup, like you said, both of them want it really bad, but for different reasons this time around. Obviously, huge implications when we were watching this game and getting ready for this game this time a year ago. Now it's South Carolina wants to play for pride, win the state, just finish on a good note. Clemson, could kind of shake up their bowl projections and where they're going to end up going in the winter here. So just got to see what's going to pan out, but I'm really excited for this game nonetheless. Obviously, a lot different than what we expected it was going to be earlier on in this season. But as they've been saying, both Dabo and Shane, for the last couple of weeks, it doesn't matter what the records are. This game is always going to have an impact on the entire state. Well, we've got more coming up. We'll be right back after this.
All right, welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We got more football to talk about, of course, because it is November. Senior days and home finales all around for a lot of our in-state teams, including Presbyterian, who was hosting Marist. A lot of things on the line in this game. Presbyterian having 34 seniors go through senior day, and this has been, if you guys have been following the Blue Hose, a pretty historic season for them so far. They were trying to get to that 10th win of the season, which is their 3rd time doing so in program history. Actually, they haven't done it since 2005. They actually led 13-0 at halftime in this game, lost the lead late in the 4th quarter. Then they engineered a game-winning drive there with just a little over 2 minutes to go. That was Justin Montgomery rushing in for the 5-yard eventual game-winning touchdown. The defense made a stand there with time expiring. And Presbyterian, like I was saying, 10 wins for the first time since 2005. So a lot of history going on there, a lot of smiles, a lot of emotions. You guys think back to 2022, which was head coach Steve Englehart's first year as head coach. This team was 1-10. So he was a little emotional after the game, just talking about the turnaround since then and just how much faith that the guys who have stayed, the seniors who have been here for the last 3 or 4 years or so with him, just about their faith and sticking with him and getting to where this group is right now.
It's an emotional deal. Thursday's practice was really, emotional for me going off the field, and then the Thursday meeting. When you go through something that's so hard, and it was hard. You guys were there the first spring in 2022, in that first year. It was hard, and every day was hard. And but that's what's made us who we are. And I love our culture, and I love the grit of our team.
So the Blue Hose finished the season 10-2. They narrowly missed the FCS playoffs. Drake ended up getting the automatic bid for the Pioneer League. So they were going to need a little bit of help from a Drake loss and all kinds of other things to make it in. But still an incredible season for the Blue Hose regardless. But I know that they weren't the only one that had a big-time win for the program on Saturday. Julia?
Absolutely. We got a couple more games going on here in South Carolina. Well, SC State was on the road at Delaware State, and that was what essentially became the MEAC championship game because both of those teams were sitting at the top of the standings heading into Saturday. And South Carolina State, they just dominated. They win 28-17, and they take that MEAC title for a 2nd year in a row. That's back-to-back seasons under head coach Chennis Berry, who has, of course, only been here for 2 seasons. And they are undefeated in MEAC play in his tenure as the Bulldogs head coach. So absolutely just a stellar performance from SC State. They will now continue on to the Celebration Bowl. They, of course, their regular season ends a little bit earlier than the SWAC, who they will play the champion of the SWAC in the Celebration Bowl. But we still have to wait a couple more weeks to find out who that's going to be. Signs are kind of pointing toward Jackson State, which would be a rematch from last season. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But obviously now they just got to keep that momentum going and see if they can get it done, because last year South Carolina State lost to Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl. So this is something that Chennis Berry wants to check off. He's been very successful, of course, looking back to when he was at Benedict College. and now just as successful as NC State. So MEAC champions down in Orangeburg once again. But speaking of Benedict College, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this over the weekend. But this, we can't show it to you, but they had the number 2 top 10 play on Sports Center over the weekend, and this is because Benedict was at one time down 24-0 against Wingate, and then they come back. 19 unanswered points, 3 seconds left on the clock. I wish we could show it to you. This is from another game this season, but 3 seconds left on the clock, and they execute an emergency backwards lateral to perfection. Malik Mullins takes off, runs it in for the walk-off score. This is blown up everywhere. People are hearing about Benedict College across the nation right now, and it's just such a cool thing to see. It's the first postseason win for Benedict in program history. Of course, they went twice when Coach Barry was there a couple of years ago, and then now in the second year under head coach Ron Dickerson Jr., he brings them back to the postseason, and they win. So now what sets up now is a really interesting situation is they're going to play Albany State for a third time this season, because Albany State, of course, in the SIAC, they already played them in the regular season. They then played them in the SIAC championship game a couple of weeks ago. And then now they have to play them for a third time back at Albany State. So you got to hope that saying rings true of, it's hard to beat somebody 3 times. They did, of course. Those were their only 2 losses this season was to Albany State. So got to see if Benedict can get it done, but really cool to see the Tigers on the national scale over the weekend. They're getting a lot of eyes on them, and just awesome to see a program like that ending up on the big stage. Well, we got a little bit more to come. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back in here to Palmetto Sports Daily. On this Monday, we were recapping a busy weekend for college football. We talk about South Carolina and Clemson. It's Palmetto Bowl week, but also shouting out quite a few of the smaller college football teams that are making a splash around the state here this season. It's been so fun to watch those guys like SC State, Benedict after that crazy SC top 10 moment. I think Newberry also won their first round playoff game. Getting to some low country football though too. Charleston Southern and the Citadel both wrapped up their seasons this past weekend. Charleston Southern going out on top. They went 4-1 in their last 5 games. So pretty impressive finish for this team that at the start of the season, I got to say, y'all, we were at the press conferences. It seemed like it was going to be a struggle for these guys. But this Saturday, finishing out conference play too, they hosted Tennessee State, and this game, got to say, barn burner out there. But the Bucks came out on top 7-6 in this game. Big shout out to their defense for holding Tennessee State to just 2 field goals in that game. Charleston Southern finishing 4-4 in the OVC Big South Football Alliance, 5-7 on the season. That's their best record since 2019, and a pro for this team. I talked to their quarterback after the game. That's Zoltan Osborne. He's a North Charleston native, by the way. He's going to be back this year. This was his first healthy full season playing since his junior year of high school. So hopefully, if he can stay healthy, a lot of these guys can be back next season, and they're hoping to build off that. So exciting for Charleston Southern here, and nice to see them go out with a win on top and at home. And it was a pretty busy crowd. It looked like it was sold out there at CSU's Buccaneer Field this past weekend. And then the Citadel Bulldogs not quite as lucky. They fell 28-26 at ETSU this past weekend. So a heartbreaker for the Bulldogs going out with a loss this one. This was their SoCon finale. Kind of interesting, too, to see Charleston Southern and the Citadel both finishing the season with conference games, because like we just talked about earlier in this show, we saw people like Furman at Clemson, and then South Carolina hosting Coastal Carolina with these smaller schools, but these two kind of structured their schedules a little differently, so able to finish with competitive games. I thought that was kind of cool. But the Citadel, like I said, falling 2 points in this one. They finished 4-8 on the season, 3-5 in the SoCon. That's the same that they went last year. Now, obviously, we know 2-3 seasons ago they were 0-10, so still improvement after that, but I think they would have liked to have gone out on top in this one. But ETSU is a team we saw get better as the season went on this year too. They lost their head coach Trey Lamb, who went to Tulsa last year, who has made quite the splash there, so I think they were looking to prove something there as well. But kind of wrapping up our college football season for all of our low country teams here. So now we've just got Clemson, Carolina this weekend, and then we've got Coastal Carolina also in action, so we're excited to wrap it it up here, and we have more to come here on Saturday Sports Extra, including the Carolina Panthers in a primetime game. Looking up here, we're taping this early on Monday. By the way, we'll be right back after the break.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. Guys, the Carolina Panthers playing in prime time tonight for the first time in a long time. If you're watching our first airing of this episode at 6:30, this is going to be a little bit of a preview for the game against the 49ers, but if you're joining us after, well, you guys already know what happened in this one. But that said, we are getting excited for this one. Bryce Young back, Brock Purdy back in the lineup for the 49ers. These two teams going at it on Monday Night Football. It'll be the first time Carolina faces Christian McCaffrey, who is the running back for the 49ers, since that 2022 trade. The last time the two teams played, actually, which was in 2022, was right before he got traded to San Francisco. Carolina coming off a big time win in overtime in Atlanta. The 49ers also cooking as well in the NFC. This is a huge game in terms of playoff implications. Carolina at 6-5, San Francisco at 7-4. Guys, your early thoughts before we watch the Panthers and what we could call the biggest game of the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, personally, Justin Herbert's on a bye for me, so I had to pick up Bryce Young for my fantasy team this week.
Ooh.
I would love to see him have even just a whisper of the performance he had last week in this one. But in all seriousness, I do think this is going to be a great game for this team to really measure how far they've come. And I do think they can do it out in Santa Clara, and I'd like to see them get it done, Summer.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really telling to see how Carolina handles this road trip, a primetime game, big moment, if they step up to it or if they kind of, fall down to it. But I'm excited to see it. They're obviously trending in the right direction. So hopefully tomorrow we'll be talking about more positives from the Carolina Panthers, and they could be in a legitimate chance to win the NFC South. That's going to do it on this episode of Palmetto Sports Daily. I got it right this time. We'll see you guys later.